Do you need a rooftop tent for overlanding? No. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Roll the ads. Okay, so obviously there's a little bit more to it than just that. You don't need a rooftop tent, but you might want a rooftop tent. So I'm going to talk about some of the things to consider before buying one, some of the pros and some of the cons. Let's start with the pros. My favorite thing about a rooftop tent is just how quick and easy they are to set up. I can roll into camp any time of night, any weather conditions, and within about 2 minutes, it's ready to sleep in. I can be warm and dry. With a ground tent, you're looking at least 3, 4, maybe even 5 times that amount of time to set it up properly, unless you get a pop-up tent. Now, the pop-up tents used to be junk. If you get one of those ones in the circular bag, well, actually, don't even bother getting one of those. They are junk and they're impossible to put away again. But the designs have really improved in the last few years, especially with the Gazelle tents. I would recommend a Gazelle tent. Those things are very quick to put up, they're sturdy, they're quick to pack away again afterwards too, and they're actually just a high quality tent. Of course, with a Gazelle tent and any other ground tent, you still have to put your bedding into the tent. So you have to put the mattress in, you'll have to inflate it or set it up, maybe a cot. You then have to move all your sleeping bags, your pillows into the tent itself. Whereas with a rooftop tent, the mattress is built into it and you can often leave almost all of your bedding, if not all of it, in the tent. With my current one, the only thing I have to put in the tent once it's open are the pillows. The rooftop tent can also be set up anywhere. I don't even need level ground. I could just use a rock or some traction boards to level the vehicle. I could camp on rocky ground. I can camp even in a paved parking lot. Let's say I'm driving somewhere and I just want to stop at a rest area for the night. Doesn't matter. You can't do that with a ground tent. Additionally, I don't need to spend time clearing the ground. So let's say you roll in somewhere to camp and there's a bunch of sticks or rocks or small stones on the ground. You have to clear an area. I don't have to do that with my tent. Because the rooftop tent's up high on the roof, it also gives you a feeling of safety. Now, with most of your animals, if they really want to get in the tent, they can probably get in the tent, whether it's on the ground or on the rooftop tent. But it does keep you away from the little things, like the bugs and ants. I've stayed in several places where there's just a ton of ants and they're just kind of roaming. You know, you're not near an ant nest as such, but you've just got ants kind of roaming, little bugs roaming across the ground. And being up on the roof means they're a lot less likely to get up there versus in a ground tent. Another advantage is the comfort. Most rooftop tents come with a 2 or 3-inch memory foam mattress in them. I love them, my wife loves them. In fact, that's the reason she goes camping with me. Now, obviously, you can get a decent mattress for a ground tent as well. And actually, I've got one. It's a fantastic self-inflating mattress. It fits perfectly in the back of the 4Runner, and I've used it in ground tents too. And actually, it's so good, I'll put a link to it in the description. Generally speaking, rooftop tents are also more weather resistant. They're usually made of a much thicker, more durable material, and you've got a nice metal frame in it that you don't see in all ground tents. This construction makes them better suited for heavy rain and far more resistant to strong winds. In addition to this, a lot of the rooftop tents have a ton of ventilation built in, way more than you see in your average ground tent. You know, you have the windows, the front, the back, even the roof can open up and give you extra ventilation, which is nice for the summer months too. Depending on the rooftop tent you get, you can also have expansion options. A lot of them have the option of adding an annex room on the bottom. That can be great for if you want somewhere sheltered to cook or hang out, or even if you want more people to come along with you and you can give them more sleeping space. When you're done for the night, they're far easier to pack away as well. In about 2 minutes, I just basically shut mine up and I'm ready to roll. That means I can get going much quicker in the morning. If you have a ground tent, I mean, if it's not a very good ground tent, you can spend 30 minutes trying to shove it back into the bag and you never end up getting that zipper done up. Not only that, but you also have to deal with any dirt that's on it. It might have little sticks. If it's been raining, maybe muddy. It's just not very nice to deal with. Big, very big. Even the biggest ground tents take up less space than a rooftop tent. You'll end up losing most, if not all, of your roof space to a rooftop tent. On my vehicle with the 4Runner, I only have probably about this much space left on the front after putting my rooftop tent on. That's about enough room for a couple of traction boards, maybe my heater, one or the other, not both. Now, some of that lost space is made up with gains in interior space. Obviously, you don't have to have the tent inside your vehicle if you've got a rooftop tent. You also don't need to store your bedding in the vehicle. It's amazing how much space you can lose inside to bedding. Because they're big and they're on your roof, you have a lot of drag from a rooftop tent. Your fuel economy is going to go way down and the costs are going to add up, especially if you're traveling thousands of miles. What makes it worse is rooftop tents usually are pretty difficult to get off, so most people end up leaving them on all year round, and I'm one of those people. So if that's your daily driver, you're getting worse fuel economy all year. They're also heavy, so you've got a lot of weight that's sitting up on your roof. Most rooftop tents, they're around 100 to 170 pounds, and all of that is up high on your rooftop. So you're changing your center of gravity. You're going to affect your handling. That's something to bear in mind, especially if you're going to be taking on some tougher obstacles, some tougher trails. If you're going off camber and you're leaning over, you probably don't want a higher center of gravity. Another disadvantage is that unless it's on a trailer, you have to pack your rooftop tent up every single time you want to leave. Let's say you get to camp and you want to set up a base camp, or you want to go out, grab a bite to eat, or go out and explore. You have to pack your rooftop tent up every single time. Now, I personally don't see that as a huge disadvantage. Not only is my rooftop tent really quick and easy to pack up, I also don't really spend a lot of time in one place. Usually I'll go to somewhere, camp a night, and then the next night I'm traveling somewhere else. While being high off the ground is nice to keep you away from the bugs and the creepy crawlies, it also has its disadvantages. If you're like me, you have to get up and pee in the night, every night, without fail. That's some personal information. While it's never fun having to pee while camping, it's made a whole lot worse by having to climb down the ladder in the night. Also, if you've got kids or pets that come with you, that's something else to keep in mind, because you're gonna have to get them up into the tent too. Finally, there's the cost. Rooftop tents usually start around $800 and can go way up to $4,000, which is a lot of money to spend on a tent. My first rooftop tent was about $1,000, and the one I've got most recently is $1,800. When you compare that to a ground tent, I mean, you could get a starter ground tent, a decent starter ground tent, for around $50. And if you want something that's a little stronger or a little better, you could spend several $100s, maybe up to about $500. If, like me, you think the pros outweigh the cons, you have three types of rooftop tent to consider. You've got the soft shell that fold out, you have the hard shell, and then you have the hybrid. Soft top rooftop tents usually have a larger sleeping area with a smaller footprint on the roof because they fold out. They're also usually slightly cheaper and slightly lighter, but they're also a little more difficult to set up. There are a few different types of hard shell rooftop tent. You got the ones that lift straight up, and then you got the ones that will hinge either the front or the side, kind of like a clamshell. And these rooftop tents are usually a lot more expensive than the soft shells, and the size you see is the size you get. So they have a much larger footprint on the tent, and there's no folding out. The advantage to these is they're usually the quickest ones to set up, and they're also usually the most aerodynamic. My current tent is a hybrid of the two, so it folds out and it has a hard shell. That way I get all of the space of a soft top, but I also get the aerodynamics of the hard shell. It is also a lot quicker to set up than your usual soft top rooftop tent. The disadvantages of the hybrid is they're usually not as low profile as your hard shell rooftop tents. They're quite a bit heavier and usually a lot more expensive too. So in conclusion, no, you don't need a rooftop tent. It's a luxury, it's a want, but for a lot of people it's worth it. For others, a ground tent or a hammock or sleeping in a vehicle is plenty good enough. It's all about what you want. Do whatever makes you happy. You know, weigh up the pros and the cons. I've done all four of them. I've slept in a ground tent, I've slept in a hammock, I've slept in a vehicle, I've slept in a rooftop tent. They all have their advantages, they all have their disadvantages. For me, and my wife especially, the rooftop tent usually wins out. I just love the convenience and the speed of setup. You know, I can drive late into the night, put up camp, be ready to sleep in a few minutes. For my wife, it's all about the comfort. You know, that is the reason she goes camping with me, and for that reason alone, it's worth buying the rooftop tent. As always, if you enjoyed the video or found it interesting, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you think there's anything I've missed, let me know in the comments. You know, I'd love to hear what your setup is. I don't think there's any right or wrong answer to this. And make sure you subscribe to the channel. I've got a ton of videos coming up, you know, more thoughts, more reviews, and a lot of travel videos, especially this summer.